Hey guys, welcome to another lecture from Innotech on our C programming crash course. And in this video we are going to be looking at variables. So basically what are variables, and how do we create variables, how do we define variables, and how do we give variables values in C. Okay, so basically I'm just going to start. There's no time to talk a lot. So basically, what is a variable? That's the first thing. Variables are memory locations, right, in your processor that your processor allocates, right, for particular values that you yourself could give, or you could allow the user to input. So the first thing we are going to do is to give the variable a value ourselves, and the next thing we are going to do is to learn how to allow the user to input a variable and you use it for your maybe operations or whatsoever. Okay, so as we said, the first thing we want to do is to include our headers, right? So hash include include stdio.h. Okay, and I'm going to include one more thing, which is the math library. It's not necessary, but yeah, I'm just going to include it. So math.h. Okay, so I'm going to include math.h. Good. And my main, so let me zoom in a bit so you can all see. So main, so curly braces now. So first things first, creating a variable, right? Or yeah, creating a variable. How do we create a variable? The first thing you need to write is the variable type. So var type, right? So you write the variable type first, and the next thing you do is you write the variable name, right? And you put a semicolon. So this is how you create a variable, right? And if you want to like assign the variable to a value, then you give the value. So this is the basic structure. Okay, but I'm not saying this is what you're supposed to write, obviously. I'm just saying this is the basic structure. So let's say I want to create and by the way, let's talk about variable types. There are different types of variables, right? So we have numbers, we have characters, we have strings, and strings are like words, right? Characters are like characters. You get the point. Okay, so as we said, we are going to be working in this video, we're going to be working only with numbers, and specifically numbers as a whole. Okay, so there are different types of numbers, right? You have integers and you have floating point numbers. So integers are basically numbers like 1, 2, 3, whole numbers. Yeah, whole numbers, both positive and negative, right, including 0. And we have floating point numbers. They are basically numbers that have decimals. Okay, so you have decimal points and then some decimal values after. And we also have what we call doubles. Doubles are like floating point numbers and decimal and integers combined. So it takes both integers and floating point numbers. We call them doubles. Okay, so how do we create an integer? You simply write int a, and let's say I want to give the value. So as we said, this is the variable type int, this is the variable name a, and I'm going to give it a value, let's say 5. Okay, and let's say I want a float, right? So float b, and I'm going to assign it to 5.1. So basically, when C is printing a float, it gives that float a particular number of decimal places, and C basically gives 6 for a start. But you can actually modify. That's when it's accepting a value, you can actually modify the number of decimal places that C can accept from a user. We are going to see that in very soon. So let's say I want to print these two values. Okay, so print f as we saw before, and open quotes. So I'm just going to say our integer is, it's actually integer, not integer. So our integer is colon. So you might think I will just write a here and the processor will know exactly what to do. It does not work this way. So what the processor basically does is, you're supposed to use a percentage and the type of the value. So in this case it is an integer, so it's percentage d. So when it concerns integers, you use percentage d, and for float you use percentage f. Okay, so the computer seems a bit down. Okay, so as I said, integers use percentage d, floats use percentage f. You're going to see soon where you use the where you state the variable. Okay, so our integer is that, and our float is, as I said, float you use percentage f. Okay, and this is now where you specify the variable. So the first variable, which is percentage d, right, is a, so I'm going to write a comma a, and the second variable, which is percentage f, is b. Okay, so semicolon, I'm going to zoom out a bit so you can all see, and I'm going to run this code now. So I guess everything is fine, so build and run. Good, so our integer is 5 and our float is 5. Good, so this is what I was saying, C just gives you to 6 decimal places, so that's fine. Okay, now let's say we don't want the user to input all this, right? So as I said, you can define the variable without actually giving a number or a value, by just giving the variable type and giving the variable name and your semicolon. So you define the variable and you have not given it a value. So let's say we defined it and we want to give the value after, so you just write now a equals maybe 5. Okay, so this way you have given it a value. You defined it and now you have used it, or you have now given it a value. Okay, but this is not what I want. So I want the user to actually input a value. So let's say please input a value, and I'm going to take this to the next line, so that when the user is inputting a value, it should take him to the next line. Or you could use tab, so that it shifts, it gives some gap between this text and where the user is going to input. So yeah, let's just take him to the next line, or the user to the next line. Good, and now I want the user now to input a value. We use the function scanf, or we use the function scanf to take in values from the user. Okay, so input 2 values. Now let's just say input a value, and we are going to give this value now to the integer. Okay, so scanf is what we are going to be using. So the user will use his keyboard and input the value into our processor. Okay, so the type of again, you're supposed to specify the type of the variable type, good, that you want the value that the user gives to store in. So it is basically %d, as we saw before, for an integer. And in this case, now you don't just put comma and put a, you now put ampersand a. So this is how you use the scanf function. You put open quotes and the variable type %d if it is an integer, %f is a floating number, and here you now say ampersand a. Okay, so ampersand a, meaning now the user is going to input a value and we are going to store that value in a. That's what it basically means. So the user inputs a value which is an integer, and we store that integer in a. Okay, and now we are going to print without b, so I don't want to print b. Okay, so let's just cut this out from our print function. Good, and close my quotes here. B is not required. So our integer is that. Okay, so this should work fine. Good, so you see it takes us to the next line. Now let's see what happens if I remove this next line. Okay, so if I remove this next line, I build and run, you see it's still there. Okay, so let's put 5 and enter. Our integer is 5. Good, so we have let the user send in the number, right? And we have outputted that number. So let's say we instead wanted b, so b here, okay, percentage f, and b here, percent f. So I'm just going to give a very long float here, so you see something 5.76 whatsoever. So random numbers, enter, and you see it gives us to 6 decimal places, so it cuts this to 6 decimal places. Now, but there is a way you can actually, let's say we did not want all this, we just wanted 5.74, and maybe the processor could now add the remaining zeros as it normally does. So you now limit the number of decimal places that you want the user to input, right, values. You can actually do that, and I want you guys to comment down below on how you think we can do that. Okay, so we have actually come to the end of the video. Thank you for watching up till now. It has been my pleasure explaining you these concepts. I hope you have fun with them. Please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, most importantly, so you don't miss any updates when we post a new video, or maybe the next video for this particular course, okay, and even our HTML course. And yeah, don't forget to comment down below on how you think we are going to modify the number of decimal places that we want the user to input. Okay, so we are going to do all that in the next video, and we are also going to do a lot more of mathematical operations using C in the next video. Okay guys, so stay safe and see you in the next video.